Welcome, soon-to-be stalkers. Now if you're new to the Stalker franchise, or have never interacted with any of the games or media, you're in the right place. In this video, I'm hoping to briefly introduce the Stalker franchise, focusing on where I think the best place to start is, as well as discussing some popular mods that will enhance your experience. I'll also be shedding some thoughts on one mod in particular, Anomaly, discussing attitudes towards it, and whether or not it's a good place to start in this series. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have some notion on where to start your expedition into the zone. With S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 coming in September of this year, and with a lot of attention, particularly from those outside of this community, I figured this would be a good video for those looking to get started in this series. And if this video helps even one person, I'll consider that a success. Before we do begin though, I'd quickly like to plug my Twitch channel. I've left a link in the description. I'm currently streaming a blind run of S.T.A.L.K.E.R Lost Alpha, so please do consider giving me a follow over there if you'd like to hang out, talk S.T.A.L.K.E.R, or just tell me how your day is going. It's much appreciated. I guess a good place to start is to answer the question, what is S.T.A.L.K.E.R? And why the hell are there full stops between each letter? And what the hell is that thing? Well, S.T.A.L.K.E.R actually stands for Scavengers, Trespassers, Adventurers, Loners, Killers, Explorers and Robbers. And why mention this? Well, I think it actually summarises the kind of games you'll be playing, because you'll be doing plenty of exploring, scavenging and killing, and spending a hell of a lot of time alone. Without going into too much detail, the S.T.A.L.K.E.R games are a series of first-person shooter survival horror games set in and around the Chernobyl exclusion zone, with a few RPG elements here and there in the form of factions, decision-making and character progression in the way of equipment management, improvement and choice of loadout being selected to suit your playstyle. Dare I say it, I'd even class the S.T.A.L.K.E.R games as immersive sims, although that term is so overused nowadays, you could probably apply it to Roblox. The games themselves focus on tight gunplay, exploration and resource management. They also heavily rely on immersion, particularly via narrative hooks and intrigue, sound design and lighting to pull you in. If all of this sounds good to you, you're in the right place. So now that the objective overview is out of the way, I'd like to give my thoughts on where a potential new player should start out in this series, which for me is the first game, Shadow of Chernobyl, or S.O.C. for short. The main reasoning behind starting here is to be eased into the lore, locations and world building of the franchise as the developers intended. You'll be given a steady pace to introduce yourself to factions and important characters, as well as key concepts and mechanics such as health and radiation management, mutants, anomalies and artifacts. The game offers a gradual learning curve which, unlike say Clear Sky, the second game in the series, won't throw too much difficulty at you straight away, and unlike Anomaly, won't dump all of the previously mentioned things on you at once from the get-go, which causes confusion for some players, but more on that later. The second reason I begin with Shadow of Chernobyl is that with S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chernobyl coming this year, it will broaden your knowledge of the pre-existing lore going into that game, so I'd argue that in order to get the most out of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, playing Shadow of Chernobyl is a must. Starting with a mod like Anomaly won't give you this narrative context, as well as playing the original will, in my opinion. Now, whenever I browse the S.T.A.L.K.E.R subreddit, I often see posts lamenting the original for being clunky, having bad graphics, being buggy, and overall being a hard-to-adopt game with few quality-of-life features. And I understand those remarks entirely. The game certainly isn't the best looking for its time, and yeah, the shooting does often feel floaty or janky, but I'd argue that these things shouldn't filter out a new player and stop them from missing out on one of the most celebrated games in the genre, let alone the franchise. And whilst I don't think forcing yourself to play the game is the solution here, because, after all, we play games for enjoyment, and forcing yourself to play Shadow of Chernobyl will most likely hamper your enjoyment and sour your experience. What I'd suggest is to manage your expectations going in, and expect some systems to be archaic compared to modern standards. After all, this is a game from 2007. For those of you still struggling to get into this game, I'll discuss a few ways of improving your experience. And this is where I'll segue into mods. After all, the modding community for these games has contributed a lot to the experience and has enhanced the originals for many, myself included. And I want to frame this from the perspective of someone who is struggling to get into the originals. You might be thinking, yeah, this game is janky and it looks like arse, I suck at it, so I'm downloading Anomaly and Gamma and EFP. Just stop right there. I'm going to try and help you out. To make this part simple, I'm going to recommend some mods for Shadow of Chernobyl that'll improve your experience if you are struggling to get into it. These mods will cover everything from basic bug fixes to quality of life improvements, graphical overhauls and major changes to gameplay. As mentioned, this series has a vibrant modding community, and I'd argue has given this franchise a second wind in recent years. Now the first mod I'd recommend is the Zone Reclamation Project, or ZRP. I'd argue this is the go-to for this game. If you're even thinking about booting this game up without it, you're going to be in for a bad time. This small mod focuses on delivering bug fixes and improving general stability, and it doesn't detract from the vanilla experience at all, besides adding some minor quality of life features. It's a must-have in my eyes, so there'll be a link to it in the description below, as with the rest of the mods I'll be talking about. I'll also throw in a link to a post on the subreddit detailing how to set it up with your game. Now the second mod I want to mention is Photorealistic Zone. So we've patched up some of the quality of life issues, let's look at improving the graphics somewhat. Photorealistic Zone is a good mod for this because as far as I'm aware, it doesn't change up any gameplay or mechanical features. It overhauls all of the game's graphics, making it much easier on the eyes, while still capturing and I'd say enhancing the intended atmosphere. If you can't get past the game's graphics, this one is for you. Now the third mod I'd like to mention is Autumn Aurora. It's a primarily graphical overhaul of the game. It gives the game this autumnal feel and also significantly overhauls the textures and the sounds, and in my opinion the game looks great with this mod installed. The caveat here is that it does change the gameplay somewhat, shifting it a bit more to the difficult side with some changes to AI behaviour, so if you do find Shadow of Chernobyl difficult to begin with, I would think twice. Besides this, it also features a few new weapons and mechanics, so it isn't a pure vanilla experience, but nothing too dramatic at the same time. If you're looking for a soft overhaul, however, this is probably your best bet. Now the last mod I'd like to mention is S.T.A.L.K.E.R Complete 2009, and this is another overhaul mod, however with a much bigger emphasis on the word overhaul. It's a somewhat frowned upon mod which overhauls everything from graphics to textures to AI to gunplay and more. Now the reason it's frowned upon is that many think the game becomes too easy, particularly with combat and resource scarcity and survival mechanics. I'm inclined to agree here because I think it definitely reduces some of the tactical gameplay and makes those great stressful encounters trivial when compared to vanilla. Though if you are finding the game difficult, this might be the mod for you. Now of these mods I've mentioned, I personally would start with the first two, which give you a stable and graphically enhanced vanilla experience. Please remember to create backups of your game files when attempting to install these mods, as if done incorrectly it could break your game. And having a backup will mean you won't need to reinstall each time or lose any progress in game, and I'm speaking from experience here. So hopefully by now you'll have a decent idea of what to expect from Shadow of Chernobyl, and I'm hoping I've given people who have given the game a miss a reason to think twice. Honestly, at this point there shouldn't be anything from stopping you from enjoying this rough gem of a game, and who knows, it might hook you, and you'll find yourself wanting more in the form of Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat, which are both great games as well, with their own charm, storylines and quirks. You can pick up all three in a bundle on Steam right now for around £20, $26 or €24, but when on sale you can grab all three for less than half this price. In my opinion though, paying full price for these games is still a steal. But let's say you're still not convinced, or you've given the game a go and really don't think that it's for you. I imagine that you'd likely be tempted to enter the zone via one particular standalone mod. S.T.A.L.K.E.R Anomaly is a standalone free-to-play mod, and I should note that it isn't for any of the games, as it doesn't require you to own them to install and play it. Rather, I'd be inclined to call it more of a fan game or overhaul, but for the purpose of this video, I'll still refer to it as a mod. It essentially meshes the game worlds of all three of the originals into one, and rather than focus on a story-based experience, allows the player to enter the zone as a member of a faction and free roam, completing contracts, go artifact hunting, and more. You've probably heard of Anomaly, as well as mod packs such as Gamma or EFP, both of which add a boatload of enhancements, gameplay changes, and honestly so much more, but that would require its own video to go through. Now if you're familiar with these mods, you'll also be aware that there are some in the community who look down on them as a source of first-time Stalker experience. I'll try to explain why this is the case, and why as a new player jumping straight into Anomaly, in my opinion, won't give you the best introduction to the game. A good analogy here with respects to Anomaly is to imagine the original trilogy as an old car. It's a bit rusted, run down, and outdated for modern standards. Anomaly steps in and strips the car down, adds new parts whilst discarding some of the others. The car handles differently. It adopts a different persona, and some of the classic features and quirks are missing. Analogy a step further, Gamma will come in and add a racing stripe, giant spoiler, it will rip out the engine for a turbo V8 and then slams your head in the door a few times before letting you drive. The point I'm trying to make here is the experience this mod provides varies so greatly from the originals that as a new player, some of the intended nuances, features and especially lore will be lost on you. And you'll see this if you browse the subreddit. I see posts on the weekly where a new player starts with Anomaly and will encounter things they don't understand and ask others what they are or what they mean, and it's often met with derision from those who began with the trilogy all those years ago. And all of this isn't to say that Anomaly or Gamma are bad. I play both regularly. I think Anomaly adds such a great experience for fans of this franchise. The ability to play the character you want to be in this living and breathing world is frankly amazing. I've had hundreds of hours of fun role-playing as a loner, a dutier or a bandit in this fantastic universe, and I think fundamentally Anomaly does still capture the soul of the trilogy. I just think that it's an experience made richer for those who have first played at least Shadow of Chernobyl. I think the key takeaway here is that there's not really a true way to play these games. Sure, there will be purists, as with any franchise with a cult following, but if you view the games and mods as part of the wider franchise, two sides of the same coin, rather than at odds with each other, you can really start to appreciate the richness and diversity within. Rather than bashing other players for preferring Anomaly over the originals, I think it's much healthier as a community to appreciate the value that both have to offer, rather than to cast aside one in favour of the other. Let's face it, these games and this IP wouldn't be anywhere as near as popular as it is now without the attention that Anomaly or Gamma has brought us. To round this video off, I think what we have in this franchise is something so special and unique that by not trying to engage with the originals, it's really doing a disservice to the franchise, and by being toxic to newer players who opt into Anomaly, it's really casting a poor representation on a community that should ultimately be unified in championing everything Stalker. But to close the video, I'd really advise any new players or those thinking of starting playing, maybe you're looking forward to Stalker 2 and want to get to know the franchise, to start at Shadow of Chernobyl, and then from there look into modding as a means of enhancing that experience. And if Shadow of Chernobyl really isn't for you, then try out Anomaly, but I'd really recommend you at least watch playthroughs or lore videos to get a base understanding of the world first. There are some great content creators in this community who have dozens of videos covering such things, so please do check them out. Why hello there. For those of you still watching, I just want to say a massive thanks to you. This is my first YouTube video and it's about a series I'm really passionate about, so I apologise if any parts come across as ranty or overdone. I'd like to ask you to leave a comment with some thoughts or feedback on this video, just so I can have a read through any critiques and get some room for improvement. Likewise, if you have any questions, please leave them below, and any series veterans or myself will try and answer them. Last but not least, I'd like to again shamelessly plug my Twitch. I've recently started streaming, and as I mentioned, I'm playing Lost Alpha at the moment. I'm aiming to stream about 3 days a week at the moment minimum, due to working full time. I'll edit in times for when I'll be live, normally evening time, UK time, and yeah, this has been sort of a content creation and streaming, I guess, has been a sort of passion for mine for many years now that I've never really jumped on. So in the new year I've decided to give it a shot. So again, if you'd like to follow me on my Twitch, leave a comment below, just say hi, tell me how your life's going. If you want to talk about Stalker, gaming, movies, TV shows, anything, please just drop in and say hi. It's greatly, greatly appreciated.